Hey everybody, it's Mandy from Chapel Forge. I get a million questions about how we freeze dry eggs. So it's seriously so simple. There's a couple ways you can do it, in my opinion at least. I have tried freeze drying raw eggs. I've tried freeze drying egg salad, deviled eggs. Like, we've done all the things and it all works amazingly. Freeze drying just scrambled eggs is definitely my go-to when there's extra or surplus or whatever. If you've been following along, you know that we butchered a bunch of chickens that were just beyond laying time. They were like pushing over 4 years old. So we don't have those. And my new girls are not quite laying. But we have a friend down the road who had an excess of eggs from his egg farm, and he offered them to us for free. And I wasn't about to turn them down because we've been working through our freeze-dried egg supply. I've showed this on Instagram and Facebook. So this is what our end product is going to look like. These are probably from a year or two ago. I've been moving them from Mylar bags into half-gallon jars and keeping them on the counter to use for baking or scrambled for breakfast or whatever. I have only one 5-gallon bucket of water glassed eggs from this year because it was just a weird year with moving and figuring out coops and all that kind of stuff. So we just don't have a ton of extra. So when he offered me these, I didn't want to say no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to freeze dry raw eggs. This is our preferred way to do it. I have these containers that our honey came in, actually from the same farmer. I moved the honey, well, Elle and Matt moved the honey into quart mason jars so that they're on the counter in glass. I am not a big fan of plastic, but these are readily available right here, and I just need to get this project done. They're only going to sit in these for maybe a couple days in the fridge until it's time for them to go into the freeze dryer, so I'm not super worried about it. So this is seriously so easy. So you're gonna crack your eggs into one big container, and then you're gonna pour them onto your freeze dry trays. I have a medium, that's 4 trays. 4 trays holds approximately 8 dozen eggs.
Well, you're very good at cracking eggs.
All right, so Jamie wanted to help. So good toddler job. I'll crack the eggs into the bowl, and then I put the canning funnel on here so that he can pour them in and we don't make a mess. And of course, we're feeding all of these shells to the chickens. So I have my compost trash can here, and we'll send those out to the chickens tomorrow because Bud and I already took care of the animals today. Jamie always wants to help in the kitchen. Bud was like this too when he was this age. Jamie's 4. And so trying to find a way to incorporate him is always really important because I don't want him to be uncomfortable in the kitchen. And, you know, I want him to learn how to feed himself and all these important life skills. And something that I really emphasize with Jamie is washing our hands after we handle raw eggs. So he loves just getting his little stool and helping mommy in the kitchen and then washing his hands usually multiple times, which is fine. All right, put that in the trash can. All right, dump it in here. And if he makes a mess, I mean, that's fine, no biggie. He wanted to try to crack the eggs himself, and he usually does pretty good, but these shells are pretty hard, so it was a little bit harder for him to do it himself. Try to keep the mess on the counter, okay? All right, thank you. All right, so why do we even freeze dry eggs? For a couple reasons. So I've talked before about how I water glass eggs, and you can dump it in here. Those are the ones that we use for dippy eggs, which aka over easy, sunny side up. Apparently not everyone calls it dippy eggs in the whole country, which I'm quickly reminded about whenever I post dippy eggs on social media. So anyway, we use our water glass eggs for dippy eggs. I usually try to keep the freeze-dried eggs on the counter to use in baking. So 2 tablespoons of egg powder plus 2 tablespoons of liquid, which we usually use water, but you can also use milk if you want it to be a little bit richer, is equivalent to 1 egg. So we'll use that for baking primarily because why waste our good water glass eggs on that for baking when our chickens aren't laying? All right, you can dump that in. Our freeze-dried eggs then, besides baking, we use to make omelets, or like Zad made an amazing hold on, I'll show you. Zad made an amazing frittata in the cast iron skillet this morning. It was so good. So you can use it for anything like that. It's just a great way to keep eggs in long-term storage for, you know, if there were a situation where you needed eggs in long-term storage, or just to use in your daily life to supplement if your chickens aren't laying much, aren't laying at all, or you're running low on water glass eggs. All right, so I wasn't gonna fill the 2, but I kind of need that other one. I'm kind of low on half-gallon mason jars right now because we've been freeze drying a lot of stuff since the freeze dryer started working again. So I have this gallon jar full. Zad wants me to use the immersion blender to blend these up. I don't typically do that, but he said that especially when he's cooking with them, it really makes a big difference if they are really scrambled, as opposed to having like whole yolk, which is fine. I don't mind doing that. So we're gonna get the immersion blender out and we're gonna blend these up. Obviously you can use a whisk if you don't have an immersion blender, and that's fine.
Hold it.
Okay. Ready?
Can I do?
Push this button. Don't put it any further than that, okay? All right, so Jamie's just putting the lid on that. So I have 4 trays in the freeze dryer right now that have bread and butter pickles on them because we're making bread and butter chips. And I'll link that video if you haven't made those. They're amazing. So I have that in the freeze dryer. I need to pull those out, and my other 4 trays are queued up with caramelized onions and peppers, which I'll link that video too if you haven't had those. They're phenomenal. Don't play with that. So I'm just gonna sit this container in one of the extra fridges until I have freeze dry trays that are empty, and then I'll fill those. We'll show you that, and we'll get them into the freeze dryer. All right, don't mind all this. Zuzu was crying, and there was like soup involved and whatever. So I have 3 free freeze dry trays. This one, we had a little bit of stew left, so I'm going to get that in Mylar bags. Maybe Matt and Nell can take it with them hiking or whatever, or we'll just put it in long-term storage. So I have our 3 trays here ready to go. I have our eggs that we did in the immersion blender. So I'm going to pour these on the trays, except I think I'm probably going to use my canning ladle because if I pour it out of that, I feel like I'm going to make a gigantic mess. All right, so we got the eggs on all of these trays. So I tried to use the canning ladle. Yep, that just made a big mess. But this handy little thrift store find, that one worked out great. So yeah, that was Zad's idea. So these are ready. I am going to get these staged in the freezer. I will show you what my rack looks like in the freezer. I've showed it to you before, but if you're new, I'll show you what it looks like. It's from Frozen Right. I'll link it in the description so you can order one. It's super handy if you want to pre-freeze, which I always recommend. So I've shown this rack before. It is just a stainless steel metal rack that I got from Frozen Right. It holds 4 trays. If you got a freeze dryer recently and your medium holds 5 trays, obviously make sure you order accordingly. They also make the like 2 bangers if you have like a short space to put it in, so you have some options with that. So anyway, this is amazing. It holds these in here very nicely to freeze them in the queue until the freeze dryer is empty. Right now I have the caramelized onions and peppers in there. I think that video is out before this one, so I'll link that if so. We're freeze drying those for like croutons or for like Matt and Elle to take on trail or whatever to add on top of meat or whatever they might be making. So we have that. I'm gonna put the other 2 in here, put my ham and bean stew in here, and then we'll wait for that thing to be empty. I'll show you what these look like when they come out. Really quick, another way to do this that can be a little bit less, like depending on what your setup is, you can take, like if you put them in a pitcher with a handle, you can just, especially if it has like a nice spout, you can just pour them onto the trays in this rack, which I've done it that way in the past. I just, honestly, for the sake of taking a nice picture for Facebook and Instagram, it's nice to have them all laid out on the counter and blah, blah, but then I'd have to like pour it back in the pitcher and bring it in here and whatever. So that works really well, like in a practical sense, that works really well for as far as recording a video on things or taking pictures. Not as practical, but maybe that doesn't affect you. So if you have a nice pitcher with a spout, you can totally blend them up in there and then pour them on the trays, and then you don't have to do this delicate hope you don't spill egg halfway through the house situation. right, so our eggs are done. They took 22, well, I lie. They actually only took like 14 hours because I had it on extra dry for a while because I was busy today and I didn't get to it. So, little trick, if you are new to freeze drying, you can set extra dry time on your machine so that automatically every time when it shuts off, oh sorry buddy, when it shuts off, then it'll keep them dry for, like mine set for 12 hours. I think like I have 12 hours of extra dry time added on. So that's always super helpful. All right, so we'll take these into the kitchen and I'll show you them, but this is what it looks like and it's amazing. And this is what our ham and bean soup looks like. It also looks great. All right, so I've talked before about how we had to butcher a bunch of chickens, and so we've been depleting our freeze-dried egg supply, and I want to work on filling that. So I have this bag that was already conveniently labeled eggs. I can just update the date. So we had just pulled these out to use like this fall or whatever. So what I do when I do eggs, like if I had 4 trays, these 4 trays would fit. So usually what I do with these, just to keep it really easy, is I just put the bag right on the end of the tray. And then I mean, you can use a spatula too, but frankly, it'll probably just come right off and you can save yourself the extra dishes. So I just push it right down the tray and right with my fingers, that's right. So I just push that down in there and it empties really nicely into the bag. So I'm going to put all 3 of these into this, and then I'll show you the impulse sealer, which I haven't really shown very much because I've been putting a lot of stuff in jars this year. So we're going to finish this up and then I'll show you the impulse sealer. All right, so again, if you're new to freeze drying, you should always keep your oxygen absorbers like re-vacuum sealed in a bag. They should be soft like this. So I'm going to drop 2 in this gallon bag. There are charts. I can link a chart. 2 is probably fine because this gallon bag is not full. So this is what, let me make these jars. This is what the impulse sealer looks like. So basically it's a hair straightener. I actually know several people that use a hair straightener and that works fine. So I usually do it twice. So you just put it down here and Jamie's gonna help push it down and then let go. Wait, let go. All right, and then you can look. I usually do it 2 times though. All right, so I did 2 on this one. I always do 2 just for good measure. Try to keep it close to the top. Jamie helped, so I probably would have put it a little closer to the top. It doesn't really matter though. The reason that I buy bags this big mostly is that you can reuse this many times. So obviously I've already used this for eggs at least once before, maybe even prior to that, who knows. So when we go to open this bag up, I'll just cut right under the seal. I'll put these into a 1/2 gallon mason jar. We'll keep them on the counter like I showed you earlier. And then I can wash this bag, hang it to dry, make sure it's totally dry before you use it again, of course. And then you can use this like until it's down to nothing. So I think these just make a lot of sense. I do have some quarts and pints on hand. I have some of the like gusseted ones, like the bottom is open or whatever with the zippers. I think they were the ones that came with my freeze dryer. I don't use them that often. This is really my preferred, especially with a family of 7. It just makes sense to store them like this. So I hope this was helpful. I'm sure that you're going to have some questions about freeze-dried eggs. Anytime I talk about these on like Facebook or Instagram, everybody always has questions. So the most important thing is that you remember that it's 2 tablespoons of egg powder to 2 tablespoons of water. That equals 1 egg. And make sure that if you're going to store them in Mylar for long-term storage, that you your oxygen absorbers. I'm going to put these in our long-term storage. We may need to pull them out. I mean, it just depends on what our egg situation is, but I want to really try to replenish that. So if you have questions, let me know. We'll see you next time.